Hi, good morning and welcome. It's good to see you at the Performance Cafe. And it's nippy out, so it's lovely to be in, to have a cup of coffee and to take some time to share some thoughts and ideas. So it's been a really crazy couple of weeks in South Africa. Like everyone else, we have COVID. But in between all of that, we had about a week of some really serious unrest in a province or two. And, one can only sit and reflect, after the fact and really just take a look at what happened and how people responded. And it was an interesting thing a couple of years ago, to divert entirely, but a couple of years ago, the South African government decided that there was a certain portion of our roads that they were going to start tolling. And Etolls came into being, and people just said, but hold on, we already pay tax, so we don't know why we should pay an extra toll. Companies that have transport vehicles pay extra tax. We pay tax not only through our personal tax, but we also pay through fuel levies. And so people sort of felt like this was unfair. And that was really the first time that I saw civil disobedience in South Africa actually come to something, where irrespective of race, color, creed, religion, background, whatever, some people actually stood together and said, you know what, we're not going to take this. We're not going to pay for this because this is not right. Look, all things set aside, unfortunately, our government is known for a bit of corruption. So people were also concerned about paying more money, but actually, it was just going into the pockets of a few individuals. And it was really interesting because it was the first time that I get that real sense that there was a bottom-up push for something. That there was people standing together post-1994 when we became a democracy, and people really stood together and didn't actually care what the other person's background was. And so a couple of years later, I think almost a decade, people still aren't paying e-tolls, and they're probably finally going to scrap the system if they know what's good for them, because we're paying fees for something that's not really being used. And now we go on to COVID, and COVID comes along, and everyone hunkers down, right? Everyone tries to keep themselves as safe as possible, but we do find people who tell us that COVID doesn't exist, that it's fictitious. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. Apparently China was trying to poison the entire world, kill off the entire world, whatever the case may be. And so, it's a year and a half that we've had COVID now, but I think only now people are sort of coming to the point where they go, okay, let's take a stance. And with vaccinations, people are really starting to show up for that. But what I find really interesting is the fact that we had these unrests at the same time as COVID. Just when we thought, well, we actually cannot take more. South Africa is riddled with problems with energy and power, so very often we'll have load shedding on top of lockdown. A year or two ago, we had a terrible drought. I don't even know if we're out of that entirely. It's just that there's so many other things that are more pressing that, we just really, what more? And then these unrests come along. And what was really interesting was that as part of the South African Constitution, the way that political unrest is dealt with actually means that our soldiers and firstly, our soldiers aren't supposed to be involved. Secondly, our police services aren't really supposed to shoot people because it's a protest and they're allowed to protest. They're allowed to have their right to say what they think. And so even when vandals were burning down and breaking into and looting shops, the police stood there and they could try and stop them, but they weren't allowed to actually take firm action. Now, whether you're on the side of this is a good idea or not is beside the point for this purpose. Why I'm telling you this is when it became clear to the people in South Africa and in those regions that the police had to play by certain rules, the communities stood up together and started ensuring the safety of spaces, of neighborhoods that people wouldn't get in. Now, the interesting thing is, this is the second time that I've seen this bottom-up approach, where resilience was found where no one thought it could be, where people were banding together who said, whether this is my job or not, whether I'm supposed to do this or not, I actually want to help in making the situation better. And the beautiful thing is now that the unrest seemed to be tapering down quite significantly, people have continued standing together and they've started supporting cleanups. Businesses are allowing employees to leave earlier or take a day off work to go and support the cleanup. And from that perspective, again, we get this impression of, those who we don't expect to lead take the leadership role to make this better. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because lots of managers right now, lots of team leaders and lots of business owners and entrepreneurs are taking a lot of strain in South Africa and all over the world, because besides our COVID that we all share, I think California's got fires again. I've heard areas in Germany are flooding. So, there's always another thing. South Africa is certainly not being picked on and being victimized. All the countries are going through COVID, and then they have more to deal with as well. But thinking about leadership might need to change. We might need to say leadership does not need to be top down. It can be bottom up. So either as an employee or a team lead, how do we get together to help the company through this? As a leader, why try and fix it all? Why not trust employees and say to them, pull them together and say, how can we all work together to make this better, instead of one person having all of the answers, the ideas, and then the autonomy to get things done? So, interestingly enough, yesterday I interviewed Kagiso Glaba from Sasol, and he quoted, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I'm thinking that maybe there's more resilience in our organizations if we just look a bit deeper than if we keep it to the superficial idea that leadership has to solve all problems and come up with all ideas. And so in this very short and meaningful little solo this week, I hope that you found some idea of where to go and look for solutions, where collaboration might actually help, and where there are those that are still a bit more resilient than you may think. If you've liked this episode, then please, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and like. And if you're joining us from LinkedIn or Facebook, like, comment, and share. One never knows who might need some of these messages. And then, until Friday when we have our next coffee companion, I look forward to seeing you at the Performance Cafe.